I never thought I'd be the kind of man who gave up everything for love. But for Jasmine, I did. Her laugh addictive, her smile disarming, and her family a whirlwind I didn't see coming. It started small. Her mom moved in just for a few weeks after her surgery. Then her brother, only until he got a job. Eventually, her cousin, her aunt, even her best friend's dog somehow made their way into our home. My home. The couch I bought with my first paycheck became her brother's nap zone. The gym in the garage I built by hand, replaced with boxes of her aunt's crystals and incense burners. And my quiet mornings, gone, replaced with shouting matches over who used the last oat milk. But I loved Jasmine, so I said nothing. Not when I was pushed out of my own office. Not when her mom reorganized my workshop. Not even when I came home one night to find them throwing out my grandfather's record collection, because it smelled like the 80s. I swallowed my pride, for her, for love. Then one night I got home late from work, exhausted, sweaty and desperate for a shower. Her brother had taken over the bathroom again. I stood waiting in the hall like a stranger in a motel, holding a towel and my patience. That's when she looked at me and said it. "They're staying, maybe you should go." No emotion, no hesitation. Just that. I didn't argue, didn't ask why. I just nodded, walked into what was left of my space, and began to pack. I took what was mine, my tools, my clothes, my dog. I left the rest. I locked the shed where I stored my late father's journals, left the key inside a drawer she'd never think to open, and I walked out. No note, no goodbye, no parting words, because sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when someone stopped fighting for you and finding the strength to stop fighting for them. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment above an old bakery 2 blocks from the harbor. It smelled like burnt sugar and sea salt. But it was mine, quiet, undisturbed, empty, yes, but peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. The first night, I slept on the floor with my dog. Milo curled up at my side, both of us wrapped in the same blanket. No noise, no drama. No one barging in asking if I'd seen the remote, or accusing me of hiding almond milk that I never drank. Just silence, beautiful, aching silence. The first few mornings felt like waking up from a long, strange dream. I kept reaching for things that weren't there, her toothbrush beside mine, her robe on the chair, the sound of her humming off-key while feeding her parrot. But there was no bird here, no Jasmine, just me. And for once, that was enough. I spent the next few weeks fixing the space up, painted the walls, built shelves, put up a map of all the places I said I'd visit, but never did. I framed a picture of my dad and placed it on the windowsill. For the first time since his passing, I didn't feel guilty for missing him, I just missed him. And slowly, I remembered who I was before I became the man who said yes to everything just to avoid her tears. One rainy evening, I got a message from Jasmine. "Can we talk?" Just that, nothing else. No apology, no explanation. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over reply. Then Milo barked, chasing a leaf that had blown through the open door, and I smiled. I didn't reply. Some conversations don't need to happen. Some people only reach out when they realize you were the one holding everything together. A week later, I passed our old place. The lights were off. A for sale sign was crooked in the yard. Maybe they all left. Maybe she finally realized what she'd lost. But I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. Because healing doesn't come from returning. It comes from choosing not to. And I'd already chosen peace. About a month later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, curiosity maybe, made me swipe. "Hi, it's Ava, Jasmine's cousin." I paused, trying to remember. The crystal lady. The one who turned my garage into a spa for bad vibes. "I just thought you should know," she said, her voice lower, less airy than I remembered. "Jasmine's not doing great." I said nothing. She didn't expect you to actually leave. Ava continued. "She thought you'd cool off and come back." I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny, not really. It was sad. Sad how easily some people mistake love for something permanent, no matter how carelessly they handle it. "She's staying with her mom now. Everything fell apart after you left." Ava said, "Your absence made a bigger hole than she expected." I exhaled slowly. "Thanks for letting me know," I said. There was a pause, then, "Do you still love her?" That question landed harder than I expected. Did I? Maybe part of me always would. But love, real love, should never require you to disappear inside it. And that's what I did for her. I shrunk so she could shine. I folded so she could expand. Now I was learning how to unfold again. I loved her enough to leave. I finally said, "That has to count for something." Ava was silent, then quietly, "I think it does." After the call, I took Milo for a walk along the waterfront. The air was crisp, the sun low in the sky, casting long gold shadows over the water. I watched a couple laughing on a bench, the woman wiping whipped cream from the man's nose. For a second, I felt something stir in me, a flicker of warmth, of wanting. Not for Jasmine, but for someone who wouldn't ask me to give up my voice, my space, my peace. Later that evening, I pulled out my old camera, the one I hadn't touched in years. Photography used to be my escape before love became my full-time job. I charged the battery, packed a bag, and planned a road trip up the coast. Not to run from something, but to run towards something. Myself. The morning I left town, I didn't tell anyone. No post, no update, no dramatic send-off. I just filled the tank, packed Milo into the passenger seat, rolled the windows down, and drove. The further I got from the city, the lighter I felt. It wasn't just about leaving Jasmine. It was about shedding everything that came with her. The weight of being the understanding one. The patient one, the man who always said, "It's fine," even when it wasn't. I stopped in small towns, talked to strangers, took photos of fishermen casting lines at dawn, of elderly couples holding hands at roadside diners, of kids chasing kites by the sea. Each shot felt like stitching a part of myself back together. In a coastal town called Haven Ridge, I found a cafe with uneven floors and the best apple pie I've ever tasted. The owner, Nora, was maybe a few years older than me, calm, confident, with smile lines that told stories of laughter and storms weathered. I don't know what drew me back there the next day, or the day after that, but soon it became routine. Milo would nap on the porch while I edited photos inside, and Nora would pour coffee before I even asked. She never pried, never asked where I was from or who broke me. She just let me be. One rainy afternoon, I showed her a photo I took of her standing in the doorway, laughing with flour on her cheek. She stared at it for a long time, then looked up at me and said softly, "You see people, I mean really see them." I didn't know what to say. No one had said that to me before. Jasmine had once called me too intense, said I made people feel examined. But Nora didn't flinch. She leaned in. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I leaned back. That night, I stayed long after the cafe closed. We talked about favorite songs and failed dreams and what it feels like to lose yourself in love, and then find yourself in the quiet that follows. I didn't kiss her, not yet, but when she placed her hand over mine, as she passed me a second slice of pie, the silence between us felt like a promise, not of something rushed or fragile, but something real, something earned. A week turned into 2, then a month. I rented a little cabin on the edge of the cliffs overlooking the sea. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms, a fireplace and a crooked wooden deck where Milo loved to sit, ears flapping in the wind. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sound of waves crashing against rock, make a pot of strong coffee, and walk down to the beach with my camera slung over my shoulder. And every afternoon, like clockwork, I'd head into town and stop by Nora's cafe. She always had my seat ready. She always saved me the last slice of pie. We talked about everything, well, almost everything. I still hadn't told her about Jasmine. Not because I was hiding it, but because, for once, it felt good to be seen as me, not someone else's aftermath. Then one evening, Nora sat across from me after closing, brushing hair behind her ear, and said, "So, when are you going to tell me what broke your heart?" I didn't flinch, I didn't lie. I just stared at the pie between us, then said quietly, "Her family moved in, and I slowly moved out of my own life." I didn't realize how far gone I was until she asked me to leave. Nora didn't gasp or pity me. She just nodded like she understood. And maybe she did. "Love's not supposed to feel like eviction," she said. I smiled. "No, it's supposed to feel like home." She looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, "Then maybe you're getting close to home again." My chest tightened, not in fear but in recognition, because somehow, in the scent of cinnamon, the clink of old mugs, and the quiet strength of this woman who never asked me to shrink, I was finding home again. Not in a house, not in a person, but in peace, in partnership, in presence. A few nights later, we sat outside under the stars, wrapped in the same blanket Milo, and I had once shared on that cold apartment floor. Only now I wasn't cold, I wasn't lost. And when Nora leaned in, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, I didn't. I kissed her, softly, honestly, finally. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just left something behind when I walked out that day. I'd made room for something better to begin. There were no grand declarations, no whirlwind promises, just moments, quiet, steady, undeniable. She'd tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. I started to notice when. I'd hum old rock songs under my breath while washing dishes. She started singing along. Every little thing felt easy, but meaningful. Like love built not on rescue, but recognition. One Sunday, we drove out to the hills where wild lavender grew in untamed waves. I brought my camera, she brought sandwiches. We didn't say much, didn't have to. She lay with her head in my lap, while I traced constellations on her shoulder with my fingertips. That evening, I posted one of the photos I took, her silhouette in front of a golden sunset with the caption, "Peace isn't quiet, it's being somewhere you don't have to explain your silence." I didn't tag her, I didn't need to, but 2 hours later, I got a message request. From Jasmine, "Is this about me?" I stared at the words, not angry, not shaken. Just done, I didn't reply. Instead, I put my phone down and walked into the kitchen, where Nora was burning dinner, again. She laughed at the smoke and said, "Maybe I should stick to coffee and pie." I kissed her forehead and said, "Maybe I'll cook tonight." That night, we danced barefoot in the kitchen to a playlist of her favorite 80s songs while pasta boiled on the stove. Milo barked, annoyed we kept stepping near his bowl, but I didn't care. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't rebound. This was redemption. Not because I found someone else, but because I finally found me, and someone who saw him clearly and stayed anyway. 6 months later, I held the keys to a small photo gallery tucked between Nora's cafe and the bookstore on Main Street. We opened it together on a windy spring afternoon, the sign above the door hand-painted by her. Focus, moments that made me stay. Inside were framed pieces of my journey. The worn porch where I first sat in silence. The ocean waves that whispered truths I wasn't ready to hear. The cracked coffee mug from the cafe. And in the center of the gallery, Nora, laughing, spinning, soft sunlight catching in her hair. On the back wall, I hung one final photo. One I had taken the morning I walked away from my old life. It was just a shadow, mine, stepping out the front door. Suitcase in one hand, Milo's leash in the other. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Sometimes the greatest love story is the one where you finally choose yourself." Nora squeezed my hand as we welcomed the first guests inside. Milo barked proudly, as if to say we made it. And for the first time in a long, long time, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Home, not in a place, not just in a person, but in a life I didn't have to ask permission to live.